pull up Internal Revenue Code 6039.
All right, we're going to get ready to pull up IRC 6039. All right, we'll do that in a second. Hey, I want to just welcome everybody today. We have so much going on right now. We're going to be talking about the regulatory authority of the U.S. Secretary of Treasury to redefine individual in the regulations, and why this could make it very easy for President Donald Trump to do a lot of the things that he's promising to do. And essentially, as the argument goes, end the U.S. tax system by redefining individual in a way that would sort of end it for us. And one way is to just say, hey, we're going to define individual as a person who consents to be taxed, and that would effectively end it. So we're going to go over this hypothesis, and there's some challenges to it. Let me tell you that. They're like, I'm actually fighting with Lexus AI over various things right now. And I was hoping to get to a presentation today, but luckily John did that today. So we're going to talk about that, but oh my, there is just so much going on right now. We just are having a hard time keeping on top of things. So we are going to, so we want to start off with Keith. Keith, welcome to the show. So welcome. Keith is the advocate to and counsel to Americans abroad. And, this podcast is about the tax code in generally, but how we got here today is because we talk about taxation of U.S. persons abroad, which is one of the most depraved, disgusting things around. I mean, it is so bad. It is so bad, and it's so indefensible. And that's really where our passion comes from. But a lot of these things, and what the U.S. government does to expats overseas is always a trial balloon for what comes stateside. Oh, it is. So it is important stuff for everyone. So we're going to get into the regulatory changes, how individual can be changed in a way that doesn't require a vote. Because individual is defined without a vote. So it can be defined without a vote again in a different way that would actually help us. So we're going to get into that. But first, I'm going to go to Keith. So Keith, you said there's some big news coming out here.
Not so much big news, but first let me just say I've changed my title. I actually am calling myself Global Navigator for Americans overseas, American immigrants, and accidental Americans, to be able to navigate through all of this muck. So that's my title these days.
Global Navigator. All right, here we go. All right, here it is. It's the first time we're seeing it. Look at that, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, wait. Let me get rid of the consulate too. Hang on. We're doing it on the fly, right? That's the way it is. We don't have time to jamming away.
Just a better title.
There we go. All right, Keith. Now with your better title. Now with your title the way it should be.
I attended the White House Office of Public Engagement Americans Abroad stakeholder call.
Oh, right.
Yesterday.
That was yesterday. The stakeholder.
It was. And I don't know how many people attended the call, because the way they had it set up on Zoom, you could not see the other participants. All you could really do was raise your hand and lower your hand, and you were on mute. So it was 30 minutes of my time that I'll never get back again. So, I know a lot of people, posed their questions, submitted their questions ahead of time. And I know a significant number of people posed their question about supporting ending double taxation, ending citizenship-based taxation, supporting residency-based taxation, etc. So those questions were out there. So it started out, and I'll just do it very brief. It started out where they introduced the people who were in their 20s, I would say, late 20s, which is fine. That's not a problem whatsoever. But unfortunately, the level of experience and expertise was just not there. They started out saying, this is how you register your child at the U.S. Embassy and Consulate from abroad. This is how you signed up for travel alerts in your countries of residence, in case you need to be warned of any type of activity that's happening in your country, so you can make your own arrangements to get out if you want to. Then it transitioned over to the representative from the IRS, where that individual stated that you have a tax filing obligation as an American, no matter where you are in the world, and this is how you file your taxes. This is the number you call. Direct file is not really ready yet for Americans overseas, but maybe one day it will be ready. And it was just, and then they went into transitioning into talking about artificial intelligence and Americans abroad. In that part, I had no clue what in the
Oh
hell they were
my
talking
God.
about.
Oh
And
my God.
and I had my hand raised the whole time, and they didn't call on anybody, but there were a couple questions that were asked, and one of the questions was posed to the IRS representative about double taxation, and her response was, that has not been part of the conversation, and that's something that Congress needs to be addressed.
Mm.
So the expectation going into this for a lot of people was, as you know, talking about the issue of the problem of double taxation and severing U.S. citizenship from tax residency. That was what the expectation was. And what we got was a whole bunch of nothing. We came in looking for apples and we got BS. So it was
Yeah.
absolutely useless. And mind you, Anthony, John, this is on the heels of that wonderful survey that we did a podcast on a few weeks ago that was just a grab of data of a number of different Americans overseas to get on a mailing list. This has nothing to do with any. Now, mind you, the information on the call certainly was beneficial if you were newly overseas. I'll give you that. But that's not what the premise of all this is about. It's about the issue that's adversely affecting Americans overseas. It was just mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling, useless.
Useless. Well, Keith, you know what? And I'm glad you mentioned that survey because I signed up for that survey. And interestingly, and during our podcast, we're talking about this survey. This is not represent. They're just trying to politic. They're just trying to get votes. They're not at all interested in solving the problem. Not at all. Not at all. And that's what we said is like, they're not interested in this. We could tell this by the survey because the survey is just grabbing emails and it's actually not asking for any of the problems. Just like, hey, are you interested in taxation?
And the last point is that
I got the email too because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you guys sent me the email to politic. So they were deceptive. The Democrats were deceptive in what they were looking for. They were not looking to help. They're just looking to get you in there. Get voting here.
Well, yeah. And the last point I'll make about the call is, and I had referenced this at the beginning of my little summary about the youth of the people on the call, is almost it was disrespectful to the audience because they did not have anybody of any senior status that may have some semblance of experience. It was these young, I don't know if they were interns or not, but very disrespectful and all along the lines of being insulting to the audience.
So basically, Lipsif, they probably threw a bunch of their unpaid interns at the problem. Hey, get some in, so they really don't want to take it seriously, right? And I mean, that's what we've been saying.
No.
They have no interest in doing it. And now you know they're just lying. They're lying. They're not interested. They have been lying. And that's what they do.
Awful.
Yeah, it's awful. So yeah, thanks, Keith, for that. Now, John, I want to head over to you. You said you had some news to share. Welcome to the show as well, John. Thanks for joining us. You had a tweet you wanted me to pull up, right? Was this the one?
Yeah, I can't see it. I'm unfortunately.
Oh, I know. Let me hear. Yeah, I hear you. There we're a little bigger now. Can you see that now?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I just have to click send an email. Just sorry.
Yeah.
Give me one
No
second.
problem. Yeah. Hey, multitasking is the way it goes here. Yeah. This is related to something else because, and it's not necessarily for U.S. expats, it's anyone with a Form 3520.
Yeah, but these are the people who are, I think, perhaps disproportionately affected by it.
And I would agree with that. I'm just thinking I have a case here that was likely because I have a case that I'm appealing right now where it was exactly this situation where and this is sort of the problem that you have. You know, the IRS has, one of the problems that foreign Americans overseas have, it's the compliance issue and these onerous form penalties. As John says, hey, look, we have a certain penalty for uncertain conduct. And that explains it very well. The IRS refuses to give clear guidance on when certain forms are required, yet the penalties are most certainly there. Now, what's even worse, and this is what the IRS does, is they say, oh, hey, look, to come in compliance, here's a few ways to get in compliance. Yep, there's a streamlined program, but sometimes you don't need to do the streamlined program. If you're just missing the form and there's no tax involved, you could just do a delinquent delinquent informational return over and it's going to be fine. Just show your reasonable cause in there. And so we have done this, and most of the time our delinquent informational returns are processed without a problem. We call them a DERF. That's what we call them, a DERF. So our DERFs go through without problems, except we get problems. Actually, with us filing that form, now the IRS will automatically assess the penalty once the form is filed. They don't look into reasonable cause. They don't look into anything. And it's just automatically assessed. Now, what are these penalties like? Well, they're $10,000. And there's even other penalties as well that are a percentage of the amount on the return for Form 3520. It often could be a value of a gift. Look, there's no U.S. tax noncompliance whatsoever. It's just a form. And if you don't report it, and if you try to cure the issue, the IRS will come back and do you the favor of penalizing you where they would not have penalized you if you did nothing at all. So it puts a lot of us tax professionals in a very difficult spot where we're trying to defend where we're trying to represent our clients, and we're trying to tell them, like, I know that says that on the IRS website, but I have to tell you, in practice, how they actually work, it doesn't line up. They contradict what they tell you to do. And it gives a lot of uncertainty for tax practitioners, individuals. It's really financial terrorism when you think about it. Because like, well, do you do this or you don't? Well, if you don't do it, you could be subjected to horrific penalties. If you do it, you could be subjected to automatic horrific penalties. So what do you do in that situation? And that's really the problem that the IRS has. And I've been, talking with the taxpayer advocate a long time. When these happen, I reach out to them and they're like, yep. And it's Ogden, Utah is the IRS service center that does that. I don't know what's going on in Ogden. Well, Utah doesn't seem like a very friendly place to me. There are some real psychopaths there that they're doing this. I mean, you are truly a psychopath if you're automatically assessing these penalties without even paying it, and not even in contradiction of your own process that you put on a website. It's a trap. So so there's a little background before we get to John. So what could you tell us here, John?
Okay, I think we need to give us some very specific context. Okay. Can you pull up Internal Revenue Code 6039F, please, on the screen?
IRC 609F. 609?
6039F.
39F. Okay.
That's what this applies to.
All right. Great. Here we go.
Okay. Can you make it a little bigger? Okay. What this says, a little smaller than that.
Yeah.
This says, all right, is one more of these opportunities for what I would call form crime.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, these are reporting requirements. They're in a section of the Internal Revenue Code where the heading actually is people subject to special provisions, interestingly. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They've been adding to this over the years. This is from 1996. This is a gift to the American people from the Clintons, basically. Okay. Now, what's extraordinary about this, now let's imagine, okay, that you're a U.S. citizen living outside the United States. And let's say that you have a spouse who is not a U.S. citizen. Let's say that spouse makes a gift to you. Okay. Or let me give you, or let's say it's over 100,000. Let's imagine they're a U.S. citizen engaged to foreign spouse who gives you a gift of a ring worth more than $100,000. Okay, which it seems to me to be entirely plausible these days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this section is designed to catch that sort of thing. And it doesn't mean 10,000 because it's been changed by regulation to 100,000. But it says if the aggregate foreign gift received, okay, exceeds 100,000, such United States person shall furnish such information to the Treasury Secretary. Okay, seriously. Okay, now move down. Okay, in other words, this is reportable. There's no tax, but you have to simply report it. Now they're defining foreign gift a little more. Now let's look at the penalty here. Now this is very, very interesting and needs to be understood. You have to read penalties carefully. Okay, so penalty for failure to file. Of course, nobody would know they'd have to do this by way of background, right? But if the United States fails to furnish the information within the time prescribed, okay. Now, the tax consequence shall be determined. So they're claiming the authority to simply include the value of the gift as taxable income. Okay, and in addition to that, though, here's the bigger problem in practice. Such United States person shall pay upon notice and demand. Now that says shall pay. Notice shall, not maybe assess, but shall pay an amount equal to 5% of the gift for the first few months. In practice, this is 25%. In other words, what this is in practice is a 25% penalty on the failure to report this. They then say, paragraph 1, meaning the penalty provision shall not apply for failure to report if it's both due to, now it's interesting the way this is phrased, due to two things, reasonable cause and due to willful neglect.
Okay, not
in any case. Now, what they've been doing for the last few years, and by the way, they've raised over $1 billion in penalties off this provision. I don't know what the time period's been, but I remember looking at this. So this is a great fundraiser. It's like, you know, the local church needs money, has a bake sale, Treasury needs money, they just make up some new penalty assessments, right? But anyway, so what they've been doing is encouraging people. I mean, almost, you know, very few people know about this. Many people find out about it late. Their tax returns, oh my God, you know, we got to file this. So they file it late. And what the IRS has been doing is automatically assessing the 25, automatically assessing it. And if you don't want to pay it, then you have to fight them over reasonable cause.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's interesting about yesterday's announcement, and this is helpful, all right, is that the IRS will now be taking the position that they will not automatically assess the 25% penalty without reading reasonable cause. Okay. So that is important. Okay. It is important. They will no longer automatically assess the penalty without reading reasonable cause. However, that does not speak to their interpretation of reasonable cause, which of course is not very reasonable. Okay, if I can put it that way. Okay, you know, it's not very reasonable.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
So you know, you'd still have to clear that hurdle, but nevertheless, this is a major announcement because I see this as coming directly from pressure from, you know, the taxpayer advocate, and you may recall it. I think it was in June. You know, they were working with the Form 3520 regulations, and there were a number of submissions and hearings. I mean, SEAT made a submission, for example. So I think this is it is certainly, okay, the result of that kind of pressure. So it is good news, but it absolutely does not mean for listeners that penalties are being waived. Okay, it absolutely does not mean that. So people need to be very, very careful in terms of what they do here.
Yeah, and I just want to teach you. So a lot of times, you know, the discussion comes down with clients is should we just do a DERF when it's required, or are we better off doing a streamlined disclosure? Now, for a lot of our people overseas, we'll do the streamlined disclosure said because there's no 5% penalty, but domestically there is that 5%. So we are doing a balancing test, like you wouldn't believe, going back and forth.
Business decision. It's always a business decision.
Yeah.
You know, where you look at these things. Yeah. Always a business decision. I mean, the United States has created a system of, you know, form crimes and penalties, that honestly, I mean, could anybody take the position that this has any moral legitimacy whatsoever?
Yeah, and I gotta say, no, I don't think it does, John. I gotta say, I really don't think it has any legitimacy whatsoever. And you know, this really goes into the question of who would want to be ruled under this. What was the constituency of the American citizens who said, "Hey, look, if I don't file a piece of paper, government, what I want you to do is destroy me. You know what? I want you to destroy me with whatever you do. You know, and I want to be put in a situation where I can't figure out what to do." I want to be put in an impossible situation where if I comply, I get hammered, and if I don't comply, I get hammered. So please, can we find a way to do that? Because, right, I mean, where does this stuff come from? And it comes from, you know, deception and closed doors and a lot of nonsense. I mean, this is just really, really incredible. And by the way, there's no tax due, right? So for some reason, U.S. Treasury, IRS gets to torture people over something that has no taxable implication whatsoever.
Well, for the people who say, sorry, you know, I want to make it right, I failed, you know, to file this late. I mean, you know, in most cases, most people don't even know about this, never file, and that's the end of it. You know, I mean, it's the people who have this, you know, I must obey the law. And I mean, I agree. Look, I agree that, you know, presumptively people should be trying to obey the law, but I'm just pointing out that this has reached the point where there's absolutely no moral connection or legitimacy between these laws. You know, when I was writing the thing for SEAT a few months ago, I mean, there's some interesting articles about this guy named Michael Carlin, who's a California-based lawyer. A really, really good thinker in this area. Has made the point repeatedly that nobody even knows what the purpose of this was. But I went back into this a little bit to try to figure out the legislative history. And I don't want to get off on this too long, but it was part of the introduction of the foreign trust rules. So it was actually in that, as part of that discussion. If you go back and look at the bill. So I suspect that what was going on in the minds of Congress, to the extent that they have any minds, okay, was sort of like, well, what if somebody, really has a trust and wants to try to characterize it as a gift to get out of some kind of issue with respect to the trust, right? Because that's the section, okay, that this amendment of the Internal Revenue came in for. I mean, I've never seen that discussed anywhere particularly, but contextually, that's where it arrived. But anyway, enough of that. It's a small victory, but it does not mean, I repeat, it does not mean that there's any penalty waiver going on here at all.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty. Yeah. Now I want to now. So that's so. And so I do want to move on to something else, John. Anything more on this? I mean, this is. I mean, it is good. It's
just
better news, but I just think all it does is just underline how completely absurd, how completely depraved, how completely divorced our tax regime is from the will of the American people. This is absolute war. This is war. It's uncertainty. It's confusion. It is evil. Evil, evil, evil every which way. It is terrorism. And that's what it is. It is terrorism for no reason whatsoever other than to terrorize people, it looks like. And I would say, I know it's a fundraiser, right? I mean, I know it's a fundraiser. $1 billion is a drop. I mean, that I think, the federal government has spent more $1 billion, I think, in a minute, probably. I mean, it's so bad. So the fact is, it really doesn't do anything for the Treasury. $1 billion really doesn't do anything. So then what's its real purpose? And then you're left with, well, then its only purpose left is not really raising revenue. I mean, it's raising some, but not enough to do anything. Then what's its real purpose? And then you're left with, it's to terrorize us. The real purpose is to terrorize, dehumanize us, divide us so that we're easy to destroy. And that's what we have here. And now this is what I would also say about the form of potential purpose. And this is how you could probably misuse the form. If you're ever examined for the IRS, if you're ever under audit, one of the things they're going to ask you is, hey, did you receive any gifts lately? Because if you do receive gifts and there's a big bank deposit, oh, yeah, no, that was my gift. Oh, okay, it's not taxable. So if you said, oh, yeah, so one thing is to say, if you're under audit, it's like, oh, yeah, I received big gifts. Oh, yeah. Of course they did. Oh, I can't remember them all. So if they do come across a bank deposit, you could say, oh yeah, it was a gift. So it's one of those things when you to be aware of what it is, and so maybe that has something to do with it, but maybe not. I mean, that's
look, it's very, very clear. You look at what's going on, all this discussion. Americans abroad who have a second citizenship should renounce and be done with this. Okay, this is an out and out war. Okay, that the U.S. government has got going on with its citizens, of which Americans abroad are the most visible example.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's no question about it. Absolutely no question about it. I mean, look at this. You want to talk about this whole? Well, no, let's not get into that today.
Yeah, let's not get into that
problem. Okay.
Yeah, and I want to, and I do want to move over to another big piece of news that came out over because Donald Trump proposed an end to double taxation. I mean,
yeah.
Whoa. And now, now Democrats, they're like, well, it's not really a thing. And they're trying to rally around and find their own solution to the problem.
Yeah.
And this is just unbelievably awful. I mean, it's and Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you to explain what's going on. But I mean, the Democrats would be much better to shut up and not say one thing other than what they're doing, because what they're doing is disgusting, deceptive, and doesn't help anyone and confusing. So Keith, I'll turn it over to you to explain what's going on.
Yeah. And again, the operative word is tone deaf. Tone deaf is what the operative word is. And what came out this week was from Congresswoman Dina Titus.
Yeah.
I will say this, because I want to say one thing somewhat positive first. I appreciate her willingness to see that there is a problem, with the issues of Americans overseas. Where I think where she is falling short is she has to be getting some bad information from Democrats abroad or some other entity, because what she came out with today, and I will read the exact tweet that she said, is filing a tax return is especially difficult for U.S. citizens abroad. Today, Senator Michael Bennet and I led a letter, and the letter was attached, with 50 plus colleagues urging the IRS to take a step towards simplifying the process by expanding direct file to millions of U.S. citizens abroad. That is her and her 50 plus colleagues' solution to the problem of the U.S. linking its citizenship to tax residency. That is her solution to the problem globally of American immigrants, with an E, Americans overseas, accidental Americans, etc., and resolving their issues is to simplify tax filing. WTF?
Now, yeah. Well, now for those, so now I need to get to the so I need to get to what so what you're saying. But Keith, they are offering a solution. Are you saying direct file isn't a solution?
No, it's not a solution.
But it's going to simplify the process by so I guess let me start with this. Direct file, what is it? What is it?
I guess for homeland Americans, it's an easier way to file your taxes directly with the IRS that's free. So maybe it does simplify the process, okay?
For some people, it may simplify the process.
But that's not the problem for U.S. citizens for Americans overseas. The problem is the U.S. extraterritorial taxation. And I just don't understand where Congresswoman Titus is getting her information. I have a pretty good idea. It's from Democrats abroad.
Yeah.
Because where else would she be getting the information? Because why would she think that this is a solution and get 50 of her colleagues on board? Something is amiss.
Well, and I think this is the thing to recognize is people overseas, most people overseas can't even use direct file as it is now. As it is now, they can't even use it because
their problems are and that's fine. But their problems are navigating two incongruent tax systems where their financial center of gravity is where they live in France, Germany, Japan, Australia, or Timbuktu. And I don't understand why that concept it cannot penetrate the minds of politicians.
Yeah, because
is it blind patriotism? Is it this
no, because
American myopic view?
they are for citizenship-based taxation, but they want to lie about it. They want to lie about it. They want to say, "Oh no, we're on your side, but we want to ruin you." And that's what it is.
We're going to make it easier, though. We're going
to make it easier to ruin you, but it actually doesn't. John, do you have any comments on direct file?
Well, first of all, direct file isn't even a solution for resident Americans.
Yeah, it's not a solution for resident Americans, right?
Because because it's so restricted. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, the first thing I would say, if it can't even work for resident Americans, why would it work for Americans?
That I did not know. Okay.
It's ridiculous. However, okay, on the broader question, the problem is not compliance. The problem is not creating a more comfortable prison. Okay. The problem is the rules that apply to Americans brought along. My belief is recognizing that reasonable people can disagree on this, but my belief is that to somehow advance this as a major step forward for Americans abroad, I think they do far more harm than good, because it's going to give Congress cover, right, for saying, this is
right. That's what,
and we've done this. Anyway, it's a 100% absolute total waste of time, irrelevant to it's even, someday, okay, it might work for resident Americans, right? But as it stands now, it doesn't even work for them. So the thing is, I think I think it's a bad idea to the extent that it could help any Americans abroad. The people who it helps are salaried employees with no foreign assets, etc. The people who don't need the help.
Right.
It does absolutely nothing for the people whose lives are being destroyed.
But why are Democrats abroad supporting this and promoting this? Why?
Well, because I was thinking about this week, right? You look at their name, it's Democrats Abroad Taxation Tax Force. That doesn't mean getting rid of,
Right.
burdens. That just means that they're thinking about taxes. And
Right. They're the force for taxes.
I mean, first of all, they're Democrats, right?
Yeah.
And it reminds me very much of the fable about the frog and the scorpion. You know that fable?
It's been a few years.
The frog
oh,
gave
yeah,
the
I'll
scorpion a ride?
I'll explain it to you. It's very short. So it's a very famous fable. You can look it up. But basically, a frog and a scorpion are on one side of a river. And the frog is getting ready to cross the river, and the scorpion, of course, can't swim. So the scorpion says to the frog, "Frog, frog, would you please help me cross the river? Can I get on your back when you swim across the river?" And the frog says to the scorpion, "What, are you kidding me? You're a scorpion. You're gonna bite me if I do." And the scorpion says, "Oh, no, no, absolutely not. Look, I just want your help in trying to get across the river." So, of course, the frog says, "Okay," and they get started on this, and halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. And as the frog is dying, the frog says to the scorpion, you said you weren't going to sting me." And the scorpion says, "I can't help it. I'm a scorpion." The Democrats can't help themselves, okay, when it comes to, this sort of issue.
Yeah.
The party in general clearly, one, has no interest in the issue of Americans abroad with respect to anything. Two, other than their vote, of course, right? And two, to the extent that they have any interest in Americans abroad, it does not include support on the tax issues. Now, the Democrats Abroad Taxation Tax Force is really an outlier, right? I mean, it's almost like a guerrilla organization out there, who's, trying to expand the consciousness perhaps of Americans abroad, Democrats abroad, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it. The best thing for Americans abroad and the country would be for the Democratic Party to cease to exist.
Well, hey, I love, we're getting we have a big audience today and a bunch of people who have never seen the show today. I just want to get to one comment. This might be the best one here. And this is sort of, I think, shows the tribalism here. And I mean, this makes no sense. Love matters. Yes, Trump and MAGA declare themselves to be enemies of those who are.
I mean, a minute. Whether that's true or not, it is, here's the problem. All right. Here's the problem. The American consciousness is so messed up that that any mentioning of anything about the Democrats is somehow carries over to now let's talk about the Republicans. I didn't say anything about the Republicans. Yeah. All right. Nothing whatsoever. Why are you responding in this way? Right? I mean, come on. There are certain things that are true regardless of the labeling of political parties. Okay.
Yeah, because it's binary thinking that
it's craziness, right?
It is absolutely craziness. Yeah. So love matters. Can you tell me? I just want to ask Love Matters a question. What do you think is so loving about Form 3528 penalties? What do you think is so loving about that? What do you think is so loving about financial terrorism? Tell me the loving behind that. I'm curious about that.
Right.
So
and people being financially ruined because of U.S. extraterritorial taxation. I deal with this every week with people around the world being financially ruined. Is that love?
No, I actually think this is a bot. I don't think, because I'm getting more bots. I'm not gonna put the bot comments up because I'm getting more and more bots that are just.
The fact that they exist at all is I think a big part of the problem. Look, I am, if I'm anything, politically, I am, and I've always been an independent. I have worked hard to support and nurture independent candidates in Canada. I have run as an independent candidate largely, for the purpose of promoting independent candidates a number of times. I have a visceral hatred of political parties. Why? Because political parties are nothing but voting conspiracies, right? They're a way to simply let sort of tribalism and group affiliation substitute for independent thought. And it's bad in the United States. It's even worse in Canada, where I live, by the way. Okay, so most of when I'm saying this, I'm thinking more in terms of Canada, etc. But the single biggest effect of the political party system in the United States is, as Keith would say, to get people to see things in sort of a binary way. There are things that historically both parties have done okay, both parties have not okay. not done okay. But there are certain things that are indisputable facts. Who was it said was one of Reagan's greatest speeches, facts are stubborn things. And the simple fact of the matter is that the Democratic Party has been and continues to be a huge problem for Americans abroad. And that was demonstrated in spades yesterday. I mean, I didn't hear that it's the conference, okay, but I've heard about it, where what these people did was not only disregarded the interests and reflected a complete lack of understanding who the people were invited to the call, but didn't even really do anything to engage in any participation or understanding. In other words, what it proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, as I've been saying for years, that when it comes to the Democrats and Americans abroad, they don't care, and they don't care that they don't care.
That's right.
You can deal with that. You know, you can imagine. So what you can do is you can say, well, the Republicans have nothing to do with what I just said.
Right.
Absolutely nothing to do with what I just said.
Right.
Although I will say parenthetically that the Republicans have actually proposed, you know, an opening in the gate to get out and work on this problem and have been doing this for a number of years, right? But somehow, you know, that becomes lost in the discussion. The simple fact is, and if you look at the conduct of DA, the only thing they're concerned with is getting out the vote for Americans. Nothing. If you look at all the messaging from DA, all the messaging vote from abroad, there is no, and this is deliberate, there is no discussion about the tax issue. There is no discussion about a single issue that affects Americans abroad. All they're doing, it's a constant stream of celebrity idiots, you know, of which the most ridiculous one I ever saw was Jane Fonda up there one day saying, oh, you know, I lived in Paris in the 70s. I understand what it means to be an American abroad. It was the most insulting, idiotic thing I've ever seen. And what DA stands for is the ridicule of Americans abroad. That's what it stands for.
That is right. This is a ridicule.
Go ahead and vote for him. Go ahead and vote for him. If you hate yourself enough.
Yeah, this is, I mean, this is just, it's disgusting. Now, there is absolutely no help that they're doing. And I mean, that's the response to this, is that we're not going to do anything, but we're going to pretend to do. So here it is. Democrats are the cause of the problem, and they don't want to solve the problem because this global tyranny of taxation is what they want, but they don't want to be seen as that. They don't want to be seen as what they actually are, which is also true for Republicans as well in other ways too. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not asking them. This isn't a big Republican love fest at all. We're just looking at, hey, who's doing what? Republicans have a real proposal. They have a real proposal that's actually viable, and the Democrats are lying, straight up lying, and I think it's a humiliation ritual. It is disrespectful, and it's them just lying to you. So we don't care. We don't care. Give us your vote. And that's what you have to understand. And I think this is the thing. And John, to your point about when you're supporting political parties, well, then understand when the elections are won, it's the political party that won. Does that political party winning help you? Does it in any way? Does this help you? And in any way, do Democrats help you? Where in any way whatsoever? And not really. Republicans don't really help too much either. But at least in this situation, they actually have a proposal.
Right.
And it's uncomfortable for a lot of people.
No comparison. There's absolutely no comparison between, you know, over a 10-year period, the attention that the Republican Party through Republicans overseas has given to this problem. There's no comparison between that and something comparable from the Democrats. That said, okay, I do think that the current DA task force, all right, as imperfect as it may be, and as sometimes confused as it may be about its objective, all right, at least one way or the other, you know, sees this as an important issue. But at the end of the day, the only way to get changes here, and I keep repeating the same thing, is for individual Americans to get behind this and to demand this kind of change. Now, the other thing about the direct filing thing that I probably should have said was that one effect of it will be to further the division and conquer, right? Oh, direct file makes it easier for me. So because it's not a problem for me, it can't be a problem for you. Until individual Americans are willing to come together as a group, you know, regardless of whether they imagine they're a Republican or a Democrat. By the way, why do you even care? Because they don't care about you other than your vote. So, I mean, I'm a little confused as to why you would blindly follow, a bunch of people who clearly exhibit nothing but disdain for you. Okay. But in any case, Americans abroad need to come together. And I think that perhaps the time has come for Americans abroad to come together to create their own shadow political party that is completely independent of Republicans, Democrats. In fact, maybe we'll announce it here. We'll call it Independence Abroad.
Ooh.
Right.
Okay.
Completely independent of homeland American issues.
Yeah, I think Independence Abroad is a good name for it. And the purpose of it, see, right now, DA, and by the way, I live in Toronto, Canada, Windsor, Ontario is a 4-hour drive from here. There was an article in Politico last week where former Ambassador Bruce Heyman is mobilizing the Vote from Abroad Brigade, get this, in Windsor, because of the number that's right across the river from Detroit. Apparently, they're going to be going door to door this weekend hunting for households with Americans in them. I mean, can you imagine this, right? Knock on the door. Hello, any Americans living here? Do you know anybody?
Do you know of
Where
anybody?
do they live?
Right.
I mean,
do you think they'll be back?
Like, you can't make this up anymore. You can't make
Right.
this up.
Basically, we're going to continue to screw you, but we want your vote.
But yeah, that's what we're now. Hey, we look. I want to. By the way, I want to get to the actual subject of what I teased today. So maybe this might be a great time to get into John's presentation, because this is what we're talking about. Is that Donald Trump has proposed an end to double taxation. He's proposed an end to taxation on tips. He's proposed an end to taxation on Social Security, and even now, I don't even get this. He's proposing an end to the IRS. What? And so what does this mean? And I think this is what I want to get to is like, well, what is required? Can he get this done? And one of the challenges that we've talked, and this is where I got the ideas from John, because John's like, hey, look, you could actually fix the regulations to end double taxation for Americans overseas. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, if that's true, can you redefine the regulations to say, well, the U.S. tax code, an individual is somebody who consents to be taxed. That is, they have to actually have your consent. And if you don't consent, you don't have to comply. So I'm thinking to myself, well, that would pretty much effectively end the IRS, because no one really wants this. This is just something that we're told that we do. Otherwise, you go to jail. So if it was something where we had to agree with it individually, I don't think a lot of people would comply, and I think it would go away, because who the hell would want it, right? So with that thing, so I've been looking into this. I'm like, well, is this something? So where I'm trying to find, and what I want to talk to now is like, what can be done by regulation and what actually does need a legislative fix. And now one of the other things too we said is like, look, a regulation is good because it could put pressures on to get a legislative fix. A legislative fix is more permanent. Regulations can be changed by administrations. So that's what I want to get into now is guys, he proposed to end the IRS and just work on tariffs. What?
Well, this is, of course, a great moment for the fair tax people, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. The fair tax people got to be excited. Yeah.
My personal view of this would be the cleanest and best solution to this, because it is so obvious that income taxes are just becoming a bigger and bigger problem, and even a number of states, right, are getting out of income taxes. This is this whole idea of income taxes is sort of rooted in an economy of massive employees and this sort of stuff, right? But let's run through this quickly. I was having trouble with the PowerPoint, so this isn't one of my best.
It's wonderful. No, I already love it. It's the best I've ever seen. Don't let anyone doubt you.
I'm not concerned about it, but okay.
Yep.
We don't have time to talk about Loper Bright today, but that's the link to the podcast we did a while ago.
Yep.
Now, I do think that Loper Bright, in general sense, has an effect on, obviously the degree to which, regulations are a thing. But I will say this. My recollection of Loper Bright is that the opinion says that to the extent that a statute specifically gives delegates the authority to do something, to the Treasury Secretary, is probably safe. But anyway, let's just run through. Now, as I run through this, I want you to notice that I'm focusing on all the pressure points for Americans abroad. And the point that I want to make is that in every case without exception, this can be changed by Treasury regulation, even if you were to leave citizenship taxation intact. Now, the reason I say this is because, what's that saying? Okay, you can't fault people for what they don't know, but maybe what they do know that isn't true. So, I'm seeing all this stuff online. Well, no, only Congress can change this. I want to make it clear to you before we start going through this. You are 100% wrong. Okay, you are 100% wrong. Many of these problems can go away through regulation. I'm going to explain why. There you go, right? So Trump announces he'll end it. And people say, well, how can he do that? Well, a lot of this can be achieved through Treasury regulation. The Biden administration apparently yesterday says that tax problems can only be solved by Congress. They're wrong. Okay. Look at it this way. Does Trump somehow have special powers that Biden does not? Obviously not. Okay. Now let's run through this stuff.
Yeah, right on. Yeah.
All right. Now, F-bar.
Mr. F-bar.
As we know, huge problem. Now,
Yeah.
Anthony, you and I have talked about this many, many times, so we don't need to go further with it today. But the point is, that's an express delegation for the Treasury Secretary to make up the rules.
Right. There it is.
All you need is a different Treasury Secretary. Right. And to make the point, by the way, there's all this discussion about the ROSC case, right? And F-bar requirements not applying to non-treaty tiebreaker green card holders. I think it might be wise for those people to wonder what happens if the regs get changed. But anyway, next.
Yeah, no, and just quickly is that this is the authority for the FBAR 3153
5314.
5314. Yeah. And if you notice, it involves the export and import of monetary instruments, and bank account never shows up anywhere here. So, some new Treasury Secretary could come in and define the regulation to comport with the actual law. The current one doesn't in any way.
Anthony, more importantly on the FBAR, the statute itself right there, I've got it on the screen, specifically gives the Treasury Secretary the authority to exempt Americans abroad. It's right there.
Right.
Okay, right there.
Right there.
No BS, nothing. Right there. Next.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing has to do with the question of defining, right, what is a corporation or what is a trust. Let's continue on here. Now, what's interesting is the Treasury Secretary completely defines the meaning of trust and corporation completely. It's not defined in the Internal Revenue Code.
Okay, yeah. So I'm having an amazing battle right now with Lexis AI on this. I'm having an amazing battle. It's insisting telling me that, oh no, the U.S. tax code defines individual. I'm like, I said, well, no, it doesn't. It does. Well, in context, it does. And then now it's admitting, okay, yeah, it doesn't specifically define individual. So it's amazing. It's amazing that the brainwashing is even in the AI.
Oh yeah, no, it's terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Keeping this relevant to Americans abroad. In May there was all this, send in, this stuff to Treasury telling them that your foreign pension isn't a trust. Now, the recommendation that I made was that basically none of these American abroad type things should be subject to 3520 reporting. But the reason I made the argument was because I thought it was important for them to not get into the issue of whether those things really were trusts or not, right? But the point is the Treasury has the total authority to do that. Next.
And where's the section? Is it in here where I'm looking for where the Treasury has the authority to define it? Is it in here? Or is it next?
No, it would be just a general, section. They can make up regulations to facilitate the Internal Revenue Code. And if you look at 7701 in the Internal Revenue Code, which is the general definition section, you'll see the words trust, you'll see corporation, but you won't see what they are. So the regulations fill that in. Okay.
Right, exactly right. And that's and again, and an individual, it doesn't define it either, right?
I've got a meeting in a while here. So same issue with corporations.
Okay, great. Corporations are defined by,
Now, I want you to stop here. Now, I want you to notice that by regulation, this, by the way, is more love from the Clintons in 1996, okay? There are certain types of foreign. Now, imagine Treasury sitting around in D.C. deciding what foreign corporations are going to be per se corporations. Once they're per se corporations, that was a sentence to the transition tax and GILTI in 1996. Notice most Canadian. This is absolutely absurd. It is absurd.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's why these people need to be shut down. It's so great. Next.
Great.
Now, on the issue of reporting, this is a big problem for Americans abroad. Now, let's go through some examples. Now, again, my point is that every one of these things can be changed through regulation. 6038, that's your Form 5471 problem, okay? The statute itself, gives some guidelines, but I want you to notice that there's a huge delegation to Treasury, right? To fill in the rules here. And this is, giving a lot of room. I mean, things like the dormant corporation exemption. This is a creation of Treasury, right? Okay. Next. And by the way, the 5 categories of forms, Form 1, Form 2, Category 1, those are all creations of Treasury.
Right. Yeah.
These are 5471 reporting, when the ownership interest in these things changes. A little hard to read, but that's right out of the Internal Revenue Code, giving the Treasury Secretary the authority to adjust this, right? Now, why am I saying this? President Trump says he can end double taxation. There's plenty of room through regulation. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Next. 8938, courtesy of, this is change you can believe in from President Obama. Now, the statute itself, again, delegates to Treasury the option to make all kinds of changes. And by the way, one visible manifestation of that is that the statutory threshold is $50,000. By regulation, it's $200,000 for Americans abroad. Also, by regulation, treaty non-residents don't have to file this thing. So most of the action is through regulation. Next. 6048, foreign trust. Well, we've talked about this before. This is what that IRS hearing was about in June. Look at it right there. The secretary is authorized to suspend or modify any requirement under this section. It's a complete delegation. Okay? The executive branch of the government can change this. Next. PFIC. Well, take a look. This is out of 1298, paragraph G. The secretary shall prescribe such regulations.
Oh my God!
Right there. Okay.
Right there. Everything about it. Everything about it.
Next.
Congress gets no say.
Well, they get say, but okay. 3520. We talked about this.
Yep.
Notice of large gifts. Notice the secretary shall prescribe such regulations. Now, in context, right, going back to that hearing in June, well, the Treasury Secretary could easily say that Americans abroad who meet the 9/11 test have a threshold that goes up to 1 million or any of these things. My point is, make no mistake about it, okay? Many of these sore points can be solved by the president through the Treasury Secretary. Congress, not relevant. Next. Now, and then we get to and then the ultimate solution on this, right, is of course through regulation, redefine individual to include only resident rather than resident or citizen. Next. And that ends citizenship taxation.
Right here. So that does it, right?
Tax resident. Okay. So that's
right.
Section 1. Next.
And and again, so you're starting off. Is that this is section
1 of the Internal Revenue.
One, and this is where this is kind of the thing where you start off with is that you start off with this idea: married individuals filing joint. Okay, it's like right, but what's an individual? Well, it's married, single, head of household. Like, all right, but what else is it? And so that is all we we only can infer that an individual is a person. Because they're married, this or that.
It doesn't define the type of carbon life form.
Right. It doesn't.
Right. It doesn't. I mean, it could be your dog. It could be your goldfish.
Right. It could be. You can marry. People are marrying their goldfish now.
But I think what's important here is this: that why? I think it's reasonable, to delegate to Treasury the ability to make regulations. But the reason you do that is to make sure that your laws make sense in context at any given time, right?
Right.
So in the 50s, this is a statute from the 1950s, basically, right? The Internal Revenue Code. I mean, I don't think it was unreasonable, to think of individuals, including residents and citizens. I don't think it was unreasonable, right? And, maybe wrong, but not unreasonable. But here we are, 75 years later, in a globally mobile world, and it makes no sense to include citizens under the title of individuals, right? Because now you've got, what it does, it extends the U.S. tax system outside the United States in a way that wasn't contemplated, I suspect, at that time. But I mean,
Well, and this is, John, this is the problem that, that I have with it. And that's because, okay, look, the income tax is the most unpopular law out there, really, the one that's most unpopular. And the fact is, all of these terms, there's never been a debate about. There's never been a politician who has been responsible, because so much of it can go to the Treasury to determine it.
Anthony, that is why Keith and Anthony need to be running for president and vice president.
Well, I want to be Secretary of Treasury. That's what I want, because I see how much. I think I'd have more power than the president as Secretary of Treasury as I'm going through this.
Well, yeah, except you can always be reined in. Next. Okay, now, so here we go. The end game, of course, is, so far I've showed you how through regulations, most of the sore points, I mean, it would be possible for Americans abroad to live and survive, okay, through the things I've talked about so far. But the end game is, if you're doing this through regulation, is to change the definition of individual in the regulations to include only residents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this can be done, in my view. Next.
All right, well, here's a comment. Eric says we're full of it.
Yeah, I understand that. And okay, do I really need to add conforming amendments? Et cetera, or even those things, right? Often include regulations. I mean, I agree with you; it's not perfect, but it can end. It can end the definition of tax residency as including U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't mean that the IRC can't refer to citizens in other ways for other purposes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, and the way it works is that they're claiming, because it's a person can be an individual, corporation, trust. Therefore, that's the definition. Therefore, individual is defined. Like, what? No, you still didn't define it. It's a nested definition. You didn't define the thing. You just said, oh yeah, a person's an individual. Okay, but what's an individual? They could be married, they can be single.
No, that's what an individual must do. Look, let's keep it real simple. Who you are is different from what you must do. The Internal Revenue Code mostly defines what you must do, and it does not define who you are, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's a good way. That is so true.
Yeah, that's how you get the discussion in. Next slide, though, because I got to go in a second.
All right.
Okay, so in 2020, we wrote a paper called A Regulatory Fix for Citizenship Taxation. It's had reasonable exposure. That's I wrote it, John Richardson, Dr. Laura Snyder, Dr. Karen Alpert. We co-authored it. This is actually a video where we talk about this at Tax Notes, where we'll explain this a little bit more. But in conclusion, because I got to go, but here's what I want to say, Anthony, okay? That it is a gigantic mistake to think that only Congress can solve this problem. Of course, that would be the gold standard.
Right.
That's hard, very hard to do. So when you get a candidate for president standing up and saying, I want to solve this problem, what I've tried to show you is that there's tremendous opportunity. There are tremendous levers through the regulatory delegation to do this. Okay. And that is something that I believe has the potential to bear greater fruit in the short run than anything in the long run. Because if you can change the reality of the situation through regulation, then perhaps that will provide evidence for the reasonable of changing the legislation to residency-based taxation. Anyway, I'm going to have to sign off. I invite you, obviously, to keep going. And I'll look forward to seeing the rest of it. But anyway, does that make sense to everybody, to anybody, what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. And I think, well, when I think the point into the point that we're making, because there's 7 times that citizen is mentioned in the U.S. tax code, but there's not that point where's individual defined, though, and it never is. That's the issue.
They're not necessarily incompatible. There can be reasons why citizenship might be relevant, okay, that have nothing to do with tax residency specifically. Okay, so I mean, you really need to kind of think this through, what you're doing, and not, before making statements like, well, but we still have the word citizen. Well, I mean, for what purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And is there a regulatory fix available there as well? Anyway, look, it's a big.
You got to hop off. We're going to, so Keith and I will get to some comments here. Thank you so much, John. You got to get to your thing. Is there one more slide or is that it? There it is. Oh, by the way, if you do want to reach out to John, there he is. Follow him on Twitter. And so thank you so much for joining us. So let's get to some comments, Keith. And so, really, and this is, I think, this is really the issue that's going on. Just technically speaking, again, just bear me out, people. Okay. Because this is the problem. The code misses something. It misses that individual. What is it? Well, an individual, it doesn't define it. It's going to now citizen is defined, citizen is there. We see citizen reference, but where is individual tied to citizen? And it's not there. So there is something very missing. If your individual income tax code doesn't define individual, you have a very, very poorly drafted law that can be undermined and is ripe for destruction just through regulations. And really the important part is this, and this is whether it's done through that or not, but at least the argument is there. So that if Congress, we're not going to pass a law. All right, we'll just do it by regulation. So do you want to, whatever you want to do? And so that's the real pressure, that there is so much. And this is the problem with America. It's ruled by, it's not ruled by laws. We're ruled by regulation. We are ruled by regulation, not laws. The thing is about regulations, they are not part of they are not reflecting, they're not authorized by any vote. No one ever voted for them. There's no political accountability for them. And that's why so much authority is dumped into regulations because our politicians don't want to be responsible for the terror that they cause. They don't want to be responsible. They want, they're doing that. Oh, geez, well, we got to do something about those regulators ruining your life. Oh, okay, we'll just vote for us again and we'll help it out. Well, those big bad regulators, how dare they do this to you? Oh man, I know. Oh my God, they did it again. Oh, so we'll get them in. We'll get them in to testify in front of us, and they're going to have to explain to themselves what they're going to do to this. Of course, nothing happens. So, all right, we have a lot of great viewers today, so I want to get to the comments here. Let's see here. Let's see here. Hello, Melvin. Let's see here. Here's it, Melvin. Just the most effective with this are hardworking middle class expats, and we're talking about ruining the double or ending the taxation for Americans abroad. This is exactly when he talks about pensions. And here's the problem about pensions: the IRS refuses to give you any clarity on how you need to file your foreign pension. They did put a revenue procedure out. I think 2017 is the RevProc, but it's just not very clear. It's ambiguous. So the IRS refuses to define the thing they demand you file for. And that's one of the reasons why the tax industry is filling in a lot of the holes. So sometimes it's filling in the holes with complete BS. And again, it's the tax prep cost. Exactly, Melvin. Absolutely. It's a compliance cost on that. Jason, great to see you. Thanks for tuning in today. And I would say this. Okay, I'm going to disagree with you for a time. I appreciate your comment here, but this is not true. This is really not true.
What is he saying?
He's saying the Democratic Party is a party of Jim Crow and slavery. And I think that's what people want you to believe. Yeah, no. And that gives the Republicans way too much credit because the Republicans are, oh my God. Abraham Lincoln was in fact one of the greatest racists this country has ever seen. And the Republican Party was actually founded, guess what? To kind of keep the black man down. Sorry. No.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
no.
and parties change over the years and they evolve in different ways. So.
Well, and they evolve in different ways to dehumanize us. So the Republican Party dehumanized us in a very different way in the 1850s and 1860s. And now the Democrat Party or the Republican Party is the one that went for, we want that federal power. We want unlimited federal power. That's the Republican Party. I am sorry. And then, of course, the Democrats, now that you guys did this, hey, we have some ideas too. So let's just remember that, guys. They work in conjunction, good cop, bad cop, to destroy us. So we have to analyze every promise on their own and not as, well, they're the Democrats and they're evil. Like, look, every
just
party
on its own merits.
Yeah, exactly. So, they have weaponized everything, right? And that's exactly right, Bill. That's a good way to do it. Doug, thanks for joining us. The most powerful man in the world, arguably. I mean, look, he's up in the polls, wants to end double taxation. And not only that, though, right, Doug? I mean, the other things he said, taxes on tips, on Social Security. Oh, and by the way, maybe we'll just end the IRS. and the Federal Reserve, because you have to do both. You have to do both. You can't do one without the other, because they do. And Eric, yeah, Eric, you're right. IRC does refer to citizens several. Now, I don't think several hundred times. I think you're overstating it, but it does refer to it several times, at least 7 times. So you're right, but what it still doesn't do, Eric, still doesn't define individual, and just plays as a game like, well, it's a person. And it's like, well, you never did it. You got to define an individual, and that's where we find it. Let's see. What are we doing about Harris? Harris puts illegals first. They are killing Americans. Never lying to Harris. I would just say
but
this.
that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
Well, no, I think it does. No, I think it does, because, well, I would just say the government is our enemy, is basically what it is, because it puts everyone's needs first, but ours. It's Washington, D.C. They get what they want. People who aren't Americans get what they want. But if you're an American, yeah, no, sorry, you're not a protected class.
Well,
in America.
especially if you're an American overseas.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, here we go. Replace the word citizen with enslaved person. There you go. That's right. That's right. And by the way, Fertai, who invented citizenship-based taxation? Oh yeah, it was Abraham Lincoln. And I guess he didn't need a 16th Amendment. He was such a great president. He didn't need the authorization to do it. He just went ahead and did it. So here, natural individual, Borchell. Good morning, Borchell. Natural individual. Is that an IRS code for people? Individual? Right. Well, that's the thing. They don't define it, but they're saying, well, a person, and again, this is how it works. They don't define individual, but they say, hey, look, a person is an individual, corporation, partnership. Like, all right, but still, what's that individual? Define it. And it doesn't, right? So yeah, no, you're not missing something. They're missing it. Oh, no more coffee. Doug, I don't even have that much coffee today. I actually only had 3 cups. Small.
Anthony, and you should know by now, Anthony is very passionate.
I am very passionate. Thank you very much, Doug, for that. I remember a party shift in the 60s and 70s to the South, and a lot of kids turning around and voting. I guess, I've had this debate with many people about the so-called party switch, about how the Democrats were Republicans were Democrats. And I think my original position was wrong. But I don't think the position that there was actually a party switch happened, but rather it was, both parties have it out. And so they'll both put on different costumes at different times. I would say it's more like that. It's like, yeah, they have different costumes they'll put on to convince you that, hey, we're the ones, we're not them. And that's the binary part of it. So that I would say that, that what Republicans are we talking about in 1850? Well, the Republicans in 1850 were strictly a regional party. There were no Southerners. It was strictly a regional party that was determined. One of the things they wanted is like, okay, the purpose of taxation is to reward our friends and punish our enemies. And by the way, we really don't like black people. We really don't like them. And we're against the expansion of slavery states, not really because we're against slavery, but because we don't like black people. That's why. That's actually what the Republican Party was founded for. And then Lincoln started his war of choice to enforce ruinous tariffs on the South, which, to fund that war, required him to impose ruinous citizenship-based taxation on the North. So really a fascinating thing when you look at how it all happened. Let's see. We got a comment. Carl, thanks for joining us. The idea that an American citizen overseas could live permanently outside the United States does not occur to these people. Right. Yeah, no, they don't think, because they don't think and they don't care, right? They don't care. And their life is all around Washington, D.C. and about what they can steal from everybody, right? So Nevada 2020, thanks for the thumbs up on I don't know. I might have to go get some more coffee right now. So, oh my God, wow, we had a great audience. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. So Keith, there it is. I mean, here we are. Here it is, Keith. And now, Keith, and you are not a Republican in any way, right?
No, a lot of my views have changed, especially living so many years, living outside the United States. No, but here's the thing, and that's where I have a hard time when I'm in the States, and I'm obviously speaking generally, not each individual, is this binary thinking. Because I'm not a fan of Trump, but I am so pleased that he made the statement that he supports ending double taxation for Americans overseas. Because whether you believe him or not, he has put the issue at the forefront. And that is a damn good thing. Yeah. Now, if you vote for him or don't vote for him, that is certainly your choice. But at the end of the day, the problem has been acknowledged by someone in some higher, what can I say? I don't want to say authority, but somebody of stature. Whether
This
you
has never
like
been
them or
done
not.
before. Yeah.
No, it hasn't.
No.
And and this is the thing, and this is where the binary thinking comes in, is that I don't like Trump, so I'm not going to support this. No, you cannot like the person or even Republican ideology, but you can support a policy. It's not that black or white. I
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
this, what Trump said, and if you and there's people, Democrats abroad, who will say, well, I can't vote for him. You know what? Don't vote for him.
Don't. Right.
Don't vote for the party that's going to screw you.
Right.
Write in somebody.
Yeah, do
Show
something
that
else.
you are
Right. Exactly.
Meaning, show that you are voting, so that percentage goes up.
Oh, I lost Keith there for a second there, but I think Keith's absolutely. Oh, here he is. He's back. All right, Keith, I lost you for a second there. That was awkward.
Yeah.
That was yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know where I got cut off.
It might have been my coffee that did it there, right? My
Yeah.
excitement, or maybe I did it. Well, blame me.
Yeah, I don't know where I got cut off in my little.
Well, no,
so
we only lost you. We only lost a little. We only lost like a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just people got to stop with this binary thinking.
Yeah.
You can support what Trump said and not like him. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, and I
That's
mean,
the
look,
thing.
I look. If someone says, "Hey, look, I'm not a fan of President Trump," well, he's got problems.
Okay.
I'll be honest, he's got problems, and so I get it. I'm not asking, and I'm not 100% sold on him. He's got some things I'm not a fan of, and especially some of the things involving the Middle East. I'm like, I don't know,
whatever
man.
it may be.
Yeah, whatever it
fine.
may be, you might have that problem, okay? But you have to still acknowledge this is an incredible, wild proposal that would fundamentally change. His proposals about the tax
Right.
system are so fundamental. I mean, and honestly, there's a fight there because the tax industry has billions and billions of dollars invested in making sure this thing exists every year so they can have a future stream of compliance revenue every year.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is Americans overseas need to start standing up for their rights, because you're always going to have issues that are more important. Always, always, always. But at the end of the day, if they don't stand up for their rights, nobody else is going to do it.
No one else will, right? Well, again, I don't think that's just true for Americans overseas. I think it's true for everybody. You got to stand up for it. So look, you have a decision. I think, you
have other populations who do stand up for their rights. Okay.
Yeah, right.
But Americans overseas are a rare bird when it comes to that.
Well, I mean, I would say Americans don't stand up for their
discriminate.
rights. Americans don't stand up to the IRS, and because it all could go away, and it's nothing. The American people don't want this.
Yeah.
No one ever wanted it because no one could want it because no one actually knows what it is. It's too big to understand. So therefore, it can't reflect the will of anybody because nobody understands what it is. So that's the problem. So I would say Americans need to understand what it is. And finally, and this is what's great about it, whether you like Donald Trump or not, he has brought this to the forefront. And I would just say, getting his star power on this, okay, we don't normally get these amount of people on our podcast, okay? So I got to thank him for that, because we're getting people interested in this. His comments are getting people interested in this, and as people could dig back to say, wait a second, this is not what we said it is, and this does not reflect the will of the American people, because so many of the decisions are determined by the Secretary of Treasury and regulations. And essentially, as we've gone through, how much of it is, oh God, way too much, right? So, hey, look, live by the regulation, folks. Die by the regulation. Now, again, hopefully we'll get some big changes, but really we could be seeing something we've never seen before. Most people don't realize, look, when Lincoln imposed his income tax on the world, it really was on the world because it had worldwide tax jurisdiction. It did go away. And then America was fine. America had all the revenue it needed. It didn't have too many wars. I got to say that, when it was funded mostly by tariffs and excise taxes on alcohol. America was fine, but that was why they wanted to get rid. The claim was like, well, here, now we have an income tax, we can get rid of alcohol. And how did that work out? Terribly, right? So not really a lot of intelligence or good ideas coming from our government. And that's what people need to wise up for. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, don't think the government is really, really on your side. Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. Fertai. Oh my God. And this is the thing. And this is what cracks me up. All right. I got to end on this one here. This is what the word draconian, right? the word Byzantine, right? These are the words of, oh my God, the tax code's so draconian. And I just laugh. I'm like, okay, so draconian is named after Dracos because he was a really bad guy in the past. But if you look at what he did to the IRS, oh my God, no. You're flattering yourself. You are flattering yourself by calling the U.S. tax code draconian. We will have new words. History, the future will have new words describing what this crap is that we go through. Complete lies through confusion, overwhelming people. It's just beyond. I mean, it is so beyond. No. We are not draconian. We wish we were draconian. We are just beyond. We are beyond, and we are superlative at being the absolute worst. And I would say so. Yeah, no, I mean, the KGB, KGB are absolutely kindergarten cheaters. Yeah, right. I would say Putin, he was KGB. He's never done this to me. He's never done any of this to me, but our own government sure does, right? So yeah, thanks for listening, bud. All right, on. All right, well, that is going to conclude it. We don't know what our topic is going to be next week because things are evolving so quickly. So be sure to subscribe, follow us on X so that when we're going live. We get a little tied up for time, so we can't have a set time every time. So that's why you want to subscribe, so you know when we're going to go live, so you could be part of the discussion. And really, this is an incredible time for all of us. I can't even believe it. Only if if only had a love for Fight Second Amendment. Yeah, right. We'll get to we'll get to more. There's more to get to, but I think the one thing is, look, let's go to the unifying thing. The unifying thing is that Americans don't want to be destroyed by this out of control taxation. So let's go with that. So for Keith Redman, John Richardson, this is Anthony Perrin. Oh, by the way, you could join Keith. You can follow him at Keith_Redman. And then John, you also can follow him on Expatriation Law. Myself, you can find me at x.com, at irsmedic.com. And I do have to give a little bit a plug for my business here. If you are facing a tax problem, you want a tax team that actually sees the IRS for the evil that it is, but also will know how not to get you in trouble, but actually solve the problem, reach out to irsmedic.com.
And then sometimes to reach out to me. Don't forget that.
And also, right. Let me just say, and by the way, if you're not ready to make that punch to reach out to a tax firm, to a tax attorney, and you're like, I don't know, I'm a little nervous of that. You know what you do. And if you're overseas and you're not sure what you should do about your compliance options, Keith, right? What did I say there? Options?
Right. Explore all options. Take a look
all
at
options. Keith is not a U.S. tax practitioner, so he can just talk to you like a friend. And Keith does talk to people like friends. And I greatly appreciate what he does because there is so much nonsense in the tax industry. As we discussed, there's so much.
Everybody's situation is different.
Is different. That's absolutely right. And so Keith really performs a valuable service for so many people confused about what to do. And, you're going to hear conflicting things all over. Keith doesn't have a lot at stake in the U.S. tax system. He doesn't have a fortune invested in its continued existence. So you can get an objective opinion really from a friend. So again, everyone, thank you so much for your comments today. It's been a great show. What an exciting time to be a tax attorney. What an exciting time to be an American. So, all right. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.